What's up, everybody? It's a late podcast with your good friend Lukie, and I'm here with Zack, the delivery man. Zack, you got a podcast, plug it at the top because let's not assume that they're going to stay for the whole thing.
Okay, thank you, mate. I appreciate the invite again, Lukie. But yeah, I do a podcast called the Unofficial Scorecard Podcast, available on all audio platforms and also, on YouTube now. If you search TuskPod, TUSCPOD, got the video episodes up there now, mate. We just recorded one together and excited for a chat. And thanks again for the time.
And the goal is for those cross-promotion listeners that we're trying not to do the same podcast twice. We will see how we do it. Is Zuffa Boxing going to take over boxing from what you saw with the first production that they put out?
No, but I don't think it's as dire as maybe some people have made it out to be. My big concern really is with the contracts and the lack of sponsors for the fighters. I'm very conflicted on that, but also the individuality. I hate the uniforms, the corporate nature. Boxing, we've been accustomed to it being the Wild West of sports, and it feels like they've kind of taken that away from us a little bit. So, ultimately, is it going to be the savior for the sport? I don't think so. Will it exist on its own, doing its own thing for the foreseeable future? I very much think so. I think they'll improve. They did an amazing job with the UFC and the growth of that sport more broadly. So I certainly think there will be valuable contributors to the sport. But I don't think it's going to swallow up the existing infrastructure that's existed for hundreds of years. That's for sure.
Outside of the pacing, which I think we both agree was amazing, what either a fighter or what thing stood out to you the most as a glaring positive from this?
As a positive, I thought I would love to say the commentary, but unfortunately not. I thought Joe Tessitore did a really good job. Max Kellerman was a little bit over the top, but if we're talking positives, I'd say the matchmaking. I thought the matchmaking was pretty good. It wasn't super high level, but I think that win-loss record that they spoke about was 227 wins and 9 losses for the combined card. I mean, man, that's one hell of a debut show. So they seem to be pretty intent on more of a 50-50 matchup, and the fact that if a fighter loses but puts on an entertaining fight or really gives an admirable effort, that they're happy to have those fighters back on the card. So if that's one thing that can change moving forward is, fighters not getting dumped after a loss, and sort of changing the perception around everyone has to be undefeated, I think that'll certainly be a positive. But I'd say the matchmaking, what do you reckon, Lukie? That's a pretty damn solid show from top to bottom for the first one in terms of matchmaking.
I enjoyed it. I think that the good thing is that it's going to shake up boxing. And I think at times boxing needs to be shaken up. So I think that that's the positive. To me, Troy Nash Jr., Robert Meriwether, Omar Trinidad stood out on the undercard. Julian Rodriguez had a sensational performance against Kane Sandoval, which I thought was great. The thing was, it just felt like the card, as I said on your show, kind of slowed down towards the end. Misael Rodriguez, a Mexican-Brazilian Olympian, fights a fighter who I believe didn't have amateur fights or very few amateur fights. The result kind of looked like an Olympian fighting a guy with very few amateur fights. And I think the hard part is the structure of the card, right? So Callum Walsh is being put in this position of being the guy that's leaned upon to carry these broadcasts, the Zuffa cards. He was on the Canelo Crawford, and he's not quite at this level, if we're being perfectly honest. He's not quite there. He's not a bad fighter, but he looks like an opening card bout or an undercard fighter at this next level. Carlos Ocampo had been stopped twice by your guy, Tim Tszyu. Yes, your guy. And Errol Spence Jr. Those are generational punchers. Fundora went 12 rounds, but none of that fight was relatively competitive. He won rounds, but I think a lot of that was Fundora trying to box, experiment with things. Ocampo stylistically is a guy who just falls into you and is there to get hit. The fact that Callum Walsh didn't stop him or have more success, I think, is extremely troubling moving forward. And I think the hope is that Callum Walsh would turn into a Conor McGregor-like figure. Right now, Callum Walsh looks to me as a project who people that don't like Zuffa Boxing are going to enjoy when he doesn't do well. That's my assessment.
Yeah, mate, I couldn't really disagree if I tried, but it was certainly apparent that the last two fights with Vargas and now with Ocampo that, I don't think Callum Walsh is ready for world title level. He's a developing prospect that still needs seasoning. I mean, you mentioned the way Ocampo sort of falls into guys, and, I just thought like the complete abandonment of the jab from Callum Walsh was just puzzling to me. He seemed to like the Ocampo's falling into you, but he's completely lacking the jab, and he was just throwing hooks and overhands and, massive, huge shots trying to get the uppercut. So not only is his skill development probably not at the level that he would hope, or maybe Zuffa moving forward will be trying to project that it is, but also his maturity. I didn't even realize till after the fight he was still only 23 or 24. I thought he was a little older than that. So yeah, but I guess this week, if we take sort of a step back and a look more at Zuffa, like, besides Opetaia, which we might get into later, and potentially Usyk, which took, I can't believe those talks are happening, but we'll see what happens. But besides that, the level of talent that you're probably going to be able to sign for a fledgling sort of startup promotion that has a background in a different sport is going to be on that more development level, that prospect level, and sort of build from there. So I think as long as Zuffa, in terms of their promotion of the product, and they don't lie to the audience, because the problem that promoters make all the time is they think they're smarter than the audience, and they're not. Audience don't get enough credit, whether they're casual or hardcores, if everyone knows what they're looking at. So as long as they don't try to overstep the mark in terms of what they're actually putting out for the public to view, could it turn into like a pro box series, like a Ring City USA, something like that with developing guys? I mean, as long as the matchups are close to 50-50, I'm going to tune in no matter what the level is. So that's probably more of something that they might have to adjust in terms of promotion moving forward, and advertisement and that type of thing. But yeah, I mean, I know for a fact you have no problem watching development fighters on the journey. A lot of times seeing guys take massive leaps and bounds in their ability and learning new skills and taking on styles they haven't fought before. Sometimes that's a lot more fun than seeing guys fight once a year for a world title, sort of, doing the same thing that they've always done once they reach that level. So I don't necessarily think it's going to be a hardcore negative, but as long as they don't try to, piss down the back of our leg and tell us it's raining, as long as they're honest about what the product is, I don't see it being a huge factor.
Who stood out to you as potential breakout guys? Like in December, these could be main card fighters. Did you see anyone on the undercard that stood out as like, this is someone that I think could really make a name and be a Zuffa boxer?
Yeah, well, I think Julian Rodriguez probably encompassed in his performance everything that the Zuffa brand is about, at least what we can take from the MMA side of things into boxing. They love guys that fight hard, that throw big shots, that go for the finish, and he certainly did that in that fight. Is Dana White and that TKO group, are they going to have the patience for the more methodical technicians and that type of thing? I guess time will tell. But yeah, straight off the top, I mean, it's the obvious one, but it is the obvious answer to the question. It's probably Rodriguez.
That's a good point. Rodriguez did have a stellar performance. I look at Troy Nash, Robert Meriwether, and possibly Omar Trinidad. He had an exciting performance against a very good fighter. Those are the ones that I kind of circled that should be towards main cards towards the end the year. Two more things, and then we'll keep this show moving. How do you feel about Fridays and Sundays possibly being the days for Zuffa Boxing? Those are untraditional. I guess you could say Friday Night Fights was on Fridays here in America. Sunday, there have been Sunday fights. Clarissa Shields is fighting, I believe, on a Sunday. But these aren't like, when you think of big fights, you think of Saturdays, at least for me. Maybe it's different in Australia where you're broadcasting from. I'm not just saying that to say something. I'm curious to see, with a startup that's based on different brands, WWE and UFC, does the boxing audience follow it to non-traditional days? Do people miss the fights sometimes? That's a question I want to throw to you.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't think it's really been consistently tried out overseas. Obviously, in America, you will be able to answer that question better than I can, Lukie. But I guess I'm no MMA expert, but I believe the UFC have something like, in the high 40s in terms of dates this year, which means they're going to be going basically every Saturday night, some city in America or some part of the world. So it seems to me from the outside looking in that they don't want to put a Zuffa boxing show on a Saturday night that goes directly up against a UFC event. In terms, if there is any crossover from the MMA to audience that want to watch some boxing, they don't want to cannibalize it and make them choose one or the other. So personally, I like the Friday night way better than the Sunday, and that's because obviously internationally, the Friday nights end up being Saturday lunchtime dates for us over here and New Zealand and Japan and that sort of region of the world. the Sunday shows end up being Monday at work. So my personal motivation to go back and watch a fight card that's already taken place that maybe isn't of the super highest quality isn't going to be that high. So personally, from my point of view, I'd prefer the Friday. I think it works better internationally, but I guess the question is, do they want to even prioritize the international market, or are they specifically just trying to build in the US first, see how it goes for a year, 2 years, 3 years, and then maybe adjust that broadcast strategy moving forward when they want to take the international audience into consideration a little bit more, or maybe they won't, but we'll see. Well, what do you make of it, mate? Saturday nights always, like in Australia, we have tons of Wednesday night shows, Friday night shows, so we watch American shows at Sunday lunchtime, so we're kind of used to the odd hours. Do you feel like that moving away from that traditional Saturday night slot is going to be detrimental to their growth?
I don't know, but I think that it's part of it. They have to, in their building of the company, they have to identify that's part of it. Another thing I want to ask you is, it's not maybe the most fair question. You probably don't have the full context, but WWE comes with its own baggage, right? It's like pro wrestling. Some people just aren't interested in it. I think that it's now become more normalized. I think that when I was growing up, if you watch pro wrestling, you'd never believe it would be on ESPN. Now it might be one of the biggest things. Like I remember my grandpa made me stop watching it because it was so stupid to him. UFC has a political element to current political figures. Like you almost, whether it's good or bad, there's a element of, if you're a big UFC fan, I think people make assumptions about how you vote politically. And you almost have to explain, oh no, I don't do that, or I do. Those are things that are coming into at certain points that are entering into this boxing sphere that I don't think can be ignored. Like there's going to be a level of pro wrestling crossover, and there are pro wrestling boxing fans who do crossover, but there are also boxing fans that are like, I am nothing like a pro wrestling fan. And the UFC fans also have a political energy and was built upon, we're better than boxing, this is true fighting. I'm interested in how these things exist in a bubble together without someone trying to say we're better than this one. Not really a question, but how do you unpack that?
Yeah, again, it's tough from this side of the world, but I've certainly on the fringes noticed, a little bit of what you were talking about. It seems to be that the MMA or UFC fan base in particular is, if you got Donald Trump doing, walkouts with music and the whole crowd applaud and that type of thing. So there certainly is that right-leaning audience there. I'm not sure. I know nothing about professional wrestling, so I have no idea how that would impact. But the group as a whole, the TKO group being, the boxing arm, the UFC and the pro wrestling, it's an interesting angle because for at least my time following the sports, they'd all seemingly from the outside looking at being competing for the same audience now, or a very similar audience, being that sort of 18 to 35 demographic. Mainly they're going to be the ones that are going to be putting the money over and buying the tickets. Obviously there's kids, certainly more so with the WWE and boxing and MMA as well. But it's going to be interesting to see how they, from as a corporate strategy, sort of move forward, all being under the one umbrella. I mean, obviously, without being in the boardrooms and having a high-level sort of business acumen or background, any sort of qualification, I really don't know. But I imagine that they would have had similar conversations to these, and I imagine that them being as good as they are from a business standpoint, that there would be a strategy for it. What that actually is moving forward, I don't know, but it's probably not going to be too long before we see it.
Now I got to ask you, Jay Opetaia signing with Zuffa. I think it's great. I think Jay ran the risk of being an underrated guy, a guy who doesn't fight at convenient times with a hard to pronounce name. And I firmly believe U.S. fight fans, if you don't fight in their time zone at a convenient time and the name isn't super easy to say, you're dead to them. Because Alexander Usyk, to some fans you'll hear, isn't good. Nail in a way you've heard isn't good. It's just, what is good if these guys aren't good? So I think Jay Opetaia ran the risk of having a hard name to say to some people and not fighting at a convenient time. What are your thoughts, as I will say one of Jay Opetaia's biggest supporters of this move?
Yeah, again, time will tell. I really don't know. As I said to you just earlier, I would have assumed that the play for Jai and his team more largely would have been sort of doubling down with Eddie Hearn and moving in that direction. You know, a powerhouse promoter to try a more established boxing powerhouse promoter would be a more likely avenue for him to get those big fights with Zurdo and David Benavidez were he to win and stay at cruiserweight for a start. But yeah, Jai's sort of taken a different track. I think he's taking a chance on an unproven outfit. I imagine their pitch to Jai and Mick Francis, who's his longtime manager and promoter, must have been absolutely phenomenal to sort of get them to take this, this new path that we really don't know a lot about. The things that I'm going to find strange, and I agree with you that it's great. Jai's fighting on March the 8th at the UFC Bubble Arena, that small place that held that first venue. So there's going to be very few fans in attendance. Funnily enough, a guy messaged me after I talked about it on the last show I did. Paul MC, been a massive supporter of mine for a lot of years, so massive shout out to him if he's watching on this channel, Lukie. But he pointed out that the NRL, which is the biggest rugby league in Australia, actually do their opening round in Las Vegas, and they're doing their opening round in Las Vegas the week after, so March 15th or whatever it would be. You know, if you were from a Zuffa perspective, they reckon there's going to be about 40,000 Australians in Vegas that weekend. And, you know, Paul put it out like, hey guys, do you realize you're going to have all these Australians in it? Like, get a bigger arena, do it the week after, and let's put a massive show on. It could be the legitimately biggest first Zuffa show in an actual arena with a big crowd and all that type of thing. But I think they seem to, maybe for financial reasons, or they want to start small, they're going to be going back to that small meta arena that they had the first show in, which I don't know. It's good that Jai's, to your point, getting that international exposure, especially in America, and he will be able to garner all that attention. And him being their biggest signing, I'm sure they're going to push him really hard, which he deserves to be pushed that hard by an outlet overseas. But I don't know, it's just going to feel weird going back into such a small arena, you know, wearing the Zuffa Boxing shorts and the Zuffa Boxing gloves and not having any sponsors. And I don't know, as much as it is maybe a step forward in some respects, it could potentially, and I hope it's not, but it could be a step back in others. It's a big fight. It's a unification against Noel Michaelian. So I'm sure Jai's going to be switched on no matter where it is. But yeah, I don't know. I guess we're going to have to. It's hard to imagine. It's so new, and we don't really have a lot of video to go off to make these opinions. So optimistically, I hope it works out really well for him. But I guess we'll know more on March 9th.
Final thing. Did it feel like the bubble to you?
Yes. Yes. And you said this to me on my show earlier. And as soon as you said it, I was like, that's exactly what it felt like. It felt like we were in COVID again. It was a weird atmosphere. Yeah. How many fight fans do you reckon were in there?
I don't know, but we're going to follow the story. Raymond Muratalla beats Andy Cruz. Big win. Raymond Muratalla, I'm going to do the ode to him. Really underrated because he's probably one of, and not his fault, well, kind of his fault. He's not a good interview, man. He's a 2-word answer guy. There's been a lot of narratives about his career. And I think it really stems from he's not a social media guy. He's not going to have great things. He's not gonna say a ton of stuff. One thing he can do is fight. And I think that with Andy Cruz, first off, when guys enter with a Cuban background, there's always going to be luster on that because Cuban boxing to most people is the most prestigious. It's the most coveted. It's the gold standard of amateur boxing. And that might be changing with Uzbekistan currently. But for most people, when you see a gold medal, and Andy Cruz was basically the best amateur of the 2020 Olympics, the best guy from that, fights for a belt in 7 fights. I think most people entered this having only seen a few fights of Raymond Muratalla and go, well, he's going to win, right? He's going to win. And what we saw was physicality is a skill. I've thought for a long time, and Raymond Muratalla has a lot of the same attributes Mikey Garcia has. And in this fight, it felt as though he's an amazing inside and mid-range fighter who's able to change with his feet and force people to have to do things on the fly. And it just felt as though Cruz didn't have the power to keep him off. And Cruz didn't have the creativity on the inside or trust his punches on the inside to fight with Muratalla. And Muratalla grew stronger as Cruz tried to move away to get his distance, to try to fight from the mid-range. It felt like he was hulking up. I don't think 118, 110 is a bad card. I don't think that that was the card, but I think that Muratalla was in control of most of the rounds. I think Cruz won a lot of rounds, but he was never in control of the rounds that he won. And because he wasn't in control of them, it's not unforeseeable for me to believe a judge could have it 118, 110. There's a lot that Andy Cruz has to work on. This was the best version of Andy Cruz, but Raymond Muratalla came in very underrated and disrespected. And now I think that he's probably still not going to get the same respect, but I think now people are going to write off Andy Cruz, and Muratalla is going to be, in my opinion, one of the top lightweights, because as I said on your show, Gervonta Davis probably bye. We won't see him for a long time. Shakur Stevenson, who knows if he comes back, right? But it's Abdullah Mason and Raymond Muratalla are the champions. They're the distinguished guys. And more than likely, that's the best lightweights right now. It takes the world 6 months to catch up with reality. So in July, people will realize Raymond Muratalla is one of the best guys. Of all the things I said to you, obviously you weren't as familiar with Muratalla. Just break it down as a fight to me. For those listening, I broke down the emotion and all the stuff I saw. What did you see in this performance?
Yeah, well, I think I fell victim to what you were speaking about first, which is sort of that romanticism with the Cuban style and Andy in particular. I liked him going into this fight. I didn't think it would be easier, but I thought he was going to do something spectacular that would blow our minds. And I thought he did in a losing effort. I didn't think there was a loser in this fight, but for the actual fight itself, I was so impressed by Muratalla, and where I underestimated him is I didn't believe I thought his feet would be a little stiffer and slower. He was actually able for, large portions of the rounds to be able to turn with Andy and take those angles off him. Andy's brilliant, so he was still able to counterpunch and punch on the fly like we knew he was going to, but I thought he would be able to do it more. Muratalla's feet were much better than I thought. And as you pointed out, physicality is a skill, and at 100% is, and applying pressure is a skill. And when people think of applying pressure, they think, all right, I've got to get in this guy's face. I've got to push him into the corner, and I've got to absolutely unload on this guy when I get him there. And if he happens to be able to escape, I've got to rinse and repeat and push him against the ropes and push him into the corner and unload. And again, that is pressure, but the way Muratalla did it was so much more deliberate and so much more patient. He was playing the long game from the start. He never overcommitted. If you overcommit with the pressure, and this is the fine line where you can, and why applying pressure is such a skill. If you overcommit with the pressure, you open yourself up. I feel like Team Garcia and Raymond Muratalla himself had the IQ to realize that, okay, we want to force this guy. We don't want to let him fight where he's going to have all the natural advantages. When we're going in too hard, we're getting reckless, and he's able to counter over the top of us. So we need to consistently and patiently stay in front of this guy. This is a 12-round fight, and let's put it on him. And I thought that really started to take its toll toward the later rounds, and especially in the championship rounds. I thought after 10, and I wasn't numerically scoring, I thought it could be 5-5 either way. It seemed like a really tight fight. Every round was competitive, but I thought Muratalla's physicality and his output and all the style that he'd employed from the beginning of that fight started to pay off for him ever so slightly in the 11th and 12th, which I thought were the most definitive rounds out of all 12. So, massive credit to Muratalla. Sensational fight. There was no loser. I still see Andy Cruz as a top 5 guy in the division. I'm looking forward to his next opportunity at world level, which I don't think is going to be too far away. I think he's going to learn an absolute ton from it. And now, how brilliant for Raymond Muratalla. He gets to the credit that he was certainly deserved from guys like me internationally that weren't as familiar with him. So all round, I really felt like there were no losers. A brilliant fight. Not a lot of fights these days I'll watch back. That will be one that I'll watch back. Actually, I've already got my old man booked in. He missed it. So next time I'm at his place, we're going to fire up DAZN and we'll be able to watch that fight together, which I can't wait for. So yeah, just a brilliant night. You know, in Australia we had, and we don't have to get into it, but the whole Nikita Tszyu, Michael Zarafa debacle, that was our way to kick off the year. So if we compare it to that, apples and oranges, I think they've kicked off the year fantastically well in America and Matchroom with Muratalla and Cruz. Brilliant fight.
Where is Muratalla to you in terms of the 20 best fighters? Is he in that, or is he just outside?
I would say off the top of my head, outside. I'd have to be looking at a list or a pool of people to really sort of zone in on that. But yeah, I'd probably say outside. At best, maybe he's on that fringe at 20 or 25, somewhere around there, possibly. I feel like he hasn't had that true like great win yet. Like if we look at a guy like Teofimo Lopez, you know, he beat Josh Taylor when Josh Taylor was the man. He beat Lomachenko when Lomachenko was the man. I don't feel like Muratalla quite has, well, he doesn't have that type of win yet. The win over Andy Cruz is fantastic. His previous wins were fantastic. He's looked great. Has he shown an ability to get that type of win against maybe a more established guy like Tank or possibly Shakur if he comes back? Maybe. I don't know if I'd tip him in those fights, but I'm not writing him off either. But for that reason, I feel like if you're going to be in that group of the best fighters in the sport, you probably need to have a bit higher of a signature win, which probably Muratalla doesn't have just yet. But he could be well on his way to getting it soon.
Well, that is something I wanted to touch on. Undercard, we're going to blow through the undercard because it's just not really that great. We had Khalil Coe miss weight and then sort of show up. He loses a point. Jesse Hart loses a point for holding. Felt like a 2300 arena main event in Philly. Good regional, good coaches getting an opportunity. Coach Rell, Greg Hackett, internet personality, and a coach, both getting platforms to show their coaching on this stage. But it felt like there was a lot of Philly guys talk a lot. Like we all know that. That's a Philly thing. It's an everywhere thing, but Philly guys talk a lot. And there was a lot of pressure on both guys. And it felt like just a very flat performance. And given that both guys looked flat, I thought Jesse Hart won the fight. Khalil came in atrociously overweight, didn't behave like a professional, doesn't seem disciplined, doesn't seem mentally engaged. Just kind of hard to really look at that performance, go, man, that's going to just lead to this. It felt like that Hart didn't get a goodwill win over a young guy who kind of dropped the ball. And it's hard to really see Khalil Coe going much further than this. How can you trust him in any fight when he doesn't make weight and he doesn't really seem, you know, Israel Madrimov on your show, we both named him the seesaw because sometimes he's good and sometimes he's not.
You made it up, Luke.
No,
I'm stealing it off you, but I have to give you credit.
He's the seesaw, so he's the seesaw. Sometimes he's up, sometimes he's down. He looks incredible. In this, it looked like he decided to go 10 rounds. And this was just one of those. It felt like Arislandi Lara against, was it Freddie Hernandez maybe? Was that who it was, where he just went 10 rounds and he dropped him in the first? And this, you didn't even get a drop, but it was like, just felt like, oh, we know this is going 10. And then Omari Jones was a breath of fresh air on this card before the main event, where you really saw someone with championship pedigree, an Olympian, goes for the distance the first time, but fought someone who came to win and had an incredible story. But everyone has an incredible story. But this guy lost his mom and his sister in the same year, which is tragic. And congratulations for him to go through such a tragedy and fight on such a stage. But why I give Omari such credit is he handled that moment so well, so composed. You're fighting someone who might not be as talented as you, but they're bringing everything into the ring with them. And to not look for the knockouts, to not always engage in wild shots, to even though you have a knockout streak going, to ride it out, go to decision, pick your shots. The composure he showed, I thought, was quite compelling. Anything you want to add to that undercard?
Yeah, well, that was my first time seeing Omari Jones, and I was certainly impressed. But I had no idea about Baxter's, recent family tragedies, which makes his performance all the more amazing. And God, how tough is that guy? He got hit with bombs and just refused to quit. So, man, Jerome Baxter has my full and total respect and admiration. But on Omari Jones, I know you're pretty high on him, Lukie. For a tall guy, he does carry his chin pretty high, and tall guys borrow an arrow a little bit, and he still has a little bit of that. But as you mentioned, he's for.
Can I add on that though? So yeah. I'm going to do a hot take right here. So this is a segment. I think head movement sometimes is the most overrated thing in boxing. And you're going to say, what do you mean by that? What do you mean? And what I'm saying is sometimes guys are moving their head too much, and they're moving their head in like a rhythmic pattern that guys can time. So yes, he stands tall and he's out here, but I feel like he's up. Like, first off, he's not a complete fighter yet. He's going to advance to new levels. And if you had like a master world champion boxer, they could break this down more eloquently. But I think a lot of times when he's tall, first off, he's a tall fighter. He's fought guys. He might pull back at times and they have to work on that. But sometimes he's tall. And when he's out there, he can extend on his punches and really sit on them and send shots there. And by that, I mean, he's out like this and he can shoot the shots over. I get what you're saying. Like, I'd like to see the knee bend a little bit more and be down, et cetera, et cetera. But when I say head movements can sometimes be overrated, is I think people can move their head without thinking about why they're moving their head. And the hardest thing to being an elite fighter is fluidity, to turn offense into defense, defense into offense. Time and time again, that's what makes a great fighter is you can transition offense into defense, defense into offense. Obviously, Omari isn't quite at that level. There's not the fluidity, but what I like is he's taking advantage of his frame as he gets more experienced and he has good coaches. I think that's going to be part of the evolution. So what I'll challenge you to is, as you watch him, see if you can start to see him being able to do elements of that, because that is, to me, the development process for him.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And that's what's so fun about watching these guys that just turn pro, is watching how they change and they take leaps and bounds and improve on things so quickly right in front of our eyes. So, it's something to keep an eye on. And that's interesting how you're saying, head movement can be overrated. And I guess it is. I guess the not the issue, but the thing that always worries me with guys that sort of have a little bit of a non-fundamental defense is like when you get taught to box, you get taught to put your hands up. When you throw the punch, you're tucking your chin behind the shoulder, you're returning that punch to the same defensive position. So like the basics are in place to, the basics are the safest way of doing something that's inherently dangerous. So anytime you go away from the basics, you're inviting more risk. And guys do it all the time, and we see heaps of people have success with it. And, I think we were talking about something very similar last time you had me on, Lukie, about Jedier Herrera. It's great when you can see the shots coming and get out of the way. And if your chin's high and your hands are down, but you see the shot coming, you can move or you can counter off it. But it's when you don't see the shots coming and you're not tucking your chin and your hands aren't up protecting you, you're just offering a bigger target. So for guys moving up in sort of progressing throughout their careers, I always look at that type of thing as a little bit of okay, this is something I want to see improvement on. But yeah, to your point, I'm sure if I'm some guy in Australia that isn't a fighter that has noticed it on the couch, I'm sure his team and his
you're either the exception to the rule or you're a future cautionary story when you fight unconventional.
Yeah.
Head movement is a little overrated when guys are like this and they're throwing punches and they're like, and you're like, wait, why are you like, guys can move their head and mess up their balance. And I'd rather a guy learn how to be on balance and go forward and always punch and always have their feet working. And then you get a lot of guys and they're like moving their head all over and they're squaring up because of the head movement. And it's like, I'd rather a guy that can have their feet and they see the shot. The big thing to me is seeing the punches. You want to see the punches and let the punches go. And I think that a lot of times people just say things because it sounds smart. Use a jab. Well, what kind of jab? Well, just use it. Or move your head. You got to move your head. Well, why do you move your head? Because you got to move your head. It's like the same kind of guys that would go into the gym and be like, well, I taught that guy how to hit hard because I did one thing, but it's a secret thing. I know this secret thing and I won't share it to you guys because I know the secret thing because I'm the smart guy. And you guys should just trust that I know it. And you always got to be a little scared when you hear that stuff because there's really no secrets. There's really no secrets in boxing. So that's kind of like, that's when boxing means a little too much to someone and they're trying to be the giver. They're trying to give their knowledge to, but that's just going on a different thing. That's years of being in the gym and that's boring. So Shakur Stevenson, Teofimo Lopez, just why should we care?
It's two of the best fighters in the world fighting each other. I think that's always something to care about. Shakur's going. We spoke about, Raymond Muratalla not really having like that one standout massive signature win on his resume just yet. Arguably, Shakur kind of doesn't either. Like, what are his best wins? Oscar Valdez and probably.
Well, let me add to this. Shakur Stevenson, in my opinion, well, his best, the Joet Gonzalez that he beat was a very good Joet Gonzalez that a lot of people won't give credit for. Oscar Valdez and Edwin De Los Santos, for all we know, could be a monster. He's got a knockout win over Jose Valenzuela, who actually fights this Sunday, by the way, on Zuffa Boxing. So it could be, but I think the problem with Shakur is he's very good at fighting like a safety first, prevent defense, slow point-based fighting style if he needs to, that can not just make you lose, but can lose fans' interest in seeing you want to fight and can hurt your paycheck. So I think that a lot of fighters didn't just fight him because of the risk, but they didn't want to take the stigma of a potential loss, which could hurt and jeopardize the fights that they could get in the future. So I think it's not as much. He's kind of like Winky Wright in that regard. Like for a long time, Winky was like a really good fighter, but you'd look and you go, well, you had to go to this place and I've never even heard of to fight this guy. Who are we sure he's good? I think it's not as much about who Shakur fought. It's about who was at the weight class when Shakur was there that he didn't fight. And why didn't those fights happen? Because every weight class he's been at, there's been really good names. And for some reason, those fights never got made. Now he's in his fourth weight class fighting his most interesting opponent. And in contrast, Teofimo Lopez is almost like a Conor McGregor of sorts, where he calls his shots, unbelievable shots. I'm going to fight Lomachenko, beats him. Then looks like he's a dead man walking after Kambosos, and he has a terrible fight against Sandro Martin, who on paper is a worse version of Shakur Stevenson. He beats Josh Taylor. And we go, what the heck? And now it's eerily similar. He's fighting like the future pound for pound number one guy. It's Bam or Shakur or David Benavidez to most of us, at least. And though he's inconsistent, there's a part of us that say, is he going to do it again? Is he going to land? He's got a little Roberto Duran in him. Is he going to do that again? Or is Shakur going to just, do what he does? Make Teo have to come forward. He's not as good at coming forward. He's better at counterpunching. Is he going to be tricky? That's the intrigue to me.
Yeah. Well, and you, that is the number one question I have about this fight. You said it right at the end there. Shakur is going to make Teo lead. That's what Shakur does. Shakur doesn't care about the crowd, doesn't care about getting booed. He's going to fight his style, and that's it. No one's changing his mind, which is fine. I like to watch it. But the whole thing is one training camp enough time for Teo to develop that skill of, he's probably got to fight sort of a similar-ish style to what Raymond Muratalla was able to do against Andy Cruz, which is something that Raymond Muratalla is more naturally accustomed to and has shown in the past. Whereas with Teo, it is a bit of a style switch up. Now, has he been working on improving that, since the Sandor Martin fight, since the Jamaine Ortiz fight where he struggled with it? Possibly. Time will tell. Or are they going to have to try and do it in this most recent training camp? Historically, one training camp isn't enough time to learn a whole new skill, a whole new offensive output a whole new offensive mindset. And even if he does, and he's not fully comfortable leading, which he hasn't shown in the past, is that going to open up further countering abilities for Shakur Stevenson? I don't really see Shakur hurting Teo. I can see Teo hurting Shakur if he can land, but if he's going to land, I think he's going to have to be on the front foot, which he historically hasn't shown a great affinity with. So I'm not saying it's Shakur's fight to lose, but yeah, I think I'm favoring him certainly in my mind. And I don't think the fight's going to produce fireworks, but because of their stature and their ability and their place in the sport in terms of, we said about the 20 best fighters in the sport, they're probably both in it. We could have a debate about where they sit, but I think they're probably both in there at various levels. But yeah, is it going to be super exciting? I don't think so, but I'm excited to see what actually unfolds.
It's a battle of two potential Hall of Famers fighting in arguably the prime of their career, with Stevenson, a featherweight, fighting a junior welterweight who's acclimated to the division as his first fight in the division. I think Mankey Crazy, a great friend of our show, said Shakur could break his hand. That's a subplot. He has had hand issues that we didn't touch on. Another thing, Teo's trained by his father. Shakur trained by Wally Moses' grandfather. Interesting dynamics that I'd like to see. That's family relationships. That's deeper than just a regular coach. So if there's times of distress, how does emotion look when it's a family member in the corner there? It's an interesting fight. Let's touch on this undercard. Keyshawn Davis, the businessman. I think he's the businessman because that personifies wealth and money. So I think that was like after Floyd Mayweather, right? Being a businessman was very cool, and saying you're a businessman means that like you make a lot of money. So like wealth probably was very cool when he was younger, and it's like a tribute to Floyd Mayweather, I imagine. What do you think that's probably like the reason why he's the businessman?
Yeah, maybe. Or he's just like, boxing's my business. This is what I do. I get in the ring. This is business. Let's fight. Let's get the win.
It's a weird nickname. It's a weird nickname. It's kind of like I don't know. Like, has there been a boxer that's like the mailman? Like, I bring them. Like, I guess how many boxers have had occupations for their nickname?
Wasn't someone called the dentist? Who was that?
I could see it. I mean, Lamont Roach Jr. went as the dog catcher for his last fight. I mean, I'm a big fan of occupational nicknames like that. But like, I think that's just kind of like a weird one to me. It's like I just imagine Keyshawn Davis looking over escrow and like pie charts and looking like being like, we got to cut back on this for the enterprise. We got to really make this quarter's profits go up by really cutting into these shares. We got to reinvest into this stuff. Like, I just imagine him having a PowerPoint and stuff. That's just like my dream, is like he'd go up to a presentation and have pie charts and stuff. But I think it's just more so like a tribute to Floyd, and businessman means wealth and power and stuff. He's fighting Jamaine Ortiz, who really good fighter, but he's never really learned how to win a fight on the judges' courts at the highest level. He won the fans' hearts over in the Lomachenko fight. Felt like Loma did win the fight, but it was the definition of a close fight. He gave Teo a good fight. I don't know how you could score for either guy because just nothing happened in the fight. But he just doesn't seem to know how to quite sway the judges. And he's fighting Keyshawn Davis, who's coming off of missing weight and just a really strange kind of half year after missing weight, where I've basically ignored most of the stuff he's done. And now he's entering the ring at junior welterweight. What are your and Bomac isn't his coach anymore and stuff. And what are your thoughts on this? It's my gut feeling Keyshawn would look amazing. He's a puncher. Jamaine Ortiz has been at this level for a while. It's probably going to be a hard matchup for Jamaine Ortiz, but Jamaine's pretty big for the weight. What's your gut feeling?
Yeah, well, I think I love this fight. It's going to tell us so much about Keyshawn, not only just after that layoff that you spoke about and, having his reputation hit amongst boxing fans for missing weight. pretty significantly in his last attempt on the scales. So it's going to show us a lot about that. It's going to show us a lot about how he bounces back, but we're going to learn a lot, especially in this matchup, of how he stacks up at that very top level in this new weight class or in his first fight. Like, I think, Jamaine Ortiz, as we pointed out, and I agree with you, hasn't really learned to win yet. He does have more of a passive style, again, similar to Shakur, but without the high level skill set. He's going to make you come to him. I think so far against kind of similar-ish opposition at 135 pounds, Keyshawn's shown a greater ability to create his own offense than Teofimo. Teofimo is very much a guy that you need to give him something to react off or counter. That's when he has traditionally found his most success. Keyshawn's shown a pretty good ability to generate his own offense. So in terms of a direct comparison on how Teo fought Jamaine, even though it was a while ago now, and how Keyshawn is going to fight Jamaine, I think it's going to tell us a lot about what he has, not only at 140 pounds, but what he has at 140 pounds this year.
Bruce Carrington versus Carlos Castro. I think it's a sneaky good fight. Castro is a good pressure fighter. Carrington's been flawless as a pro, except for his fight with Suleiman Segaway, where he might have lost that fight. It kind of showed that if there was a way to beat him, it was volume and pressure. Other than that, he's basically looked like a standout breakout star. He's a New York market fighter, even though he trains in Las Vegas. So I'm sure it's like the fact that he's at a Madison Square Garden, he's going to be envisioning main eventing this type of venue at one point. It really feels like this is a moment for Bruce Carrington to really kind of step up. He's fighting for the WBC vacant title. It's a great opportunity for him to basically become a belt holder in his hometown, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely, mate. And you mentioned, is it Sugaway? I can never say that name correctly.
Just say Mr. S.
Mr. S. That was a little bit of a down performance, but then, and again, from Australian perspective, the next fight out on the Mike Tyson, Jake Paul undercard, he was absolutely brilliant against Dana Coolwell, someone I've been following from almost his pro debut. And Dana Coolwell can fight. Well, I was actually pretty confident in that fight. Dana Coolwell could do enough to get the win, especially after that shaky performance against Mr. S from Shushu. But that's the brilliance of Bruce Carrington. He corrected the problems.
Is a world champion level boxer to me.
He's an excellent fighter.
He gave Carrington some issues in that fight, and I think he's a very underrated fighter that people look at as a journeyman. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, and to that point, he had he's got 3 losses on his record now, one being to Carrington. His other 2 losses, I saw both fights live. I believe he was robbed both times. One of them was at super featherweight and the other was at lightweight. And again, I still thought he won. So in my opinion, he was undefeated going into that fight. It's kind of been a bit of a, for Coolwell, a career speed hump he hasn't been able to get over yet. There's been a bit of inactivity and stuff like that. But anyway, we're talking about Shushu. But yeah, I thought that was a brilliant way to bounce back from that shaky performance against Mr. S. Against, to your point, and I'm not surprised that you noticed and gave Shushu the credit for that win, because Dana Coolwell can box, man. He can fight. He's a really good fighter, and I'm sure he'll come again given the opportunity. But since then, Carrington's been flawless. I do have question marks on where Carlos Castro is right now. Like, I believe he didn't fight at all last year, coming off that loss to Cool Boy Steph. How does he look after all this?
And if we're being honest, that was a 50-50 fight. He dropped Steph in that fight, right? And it was a pretty close fight.
I'll take your memory over mine. I don't really have a great memory of it. I was more just going off the box rec result, if I'm being totally honest.
It was a close fight. Like, that's a fight I think that Fulton's pretty lucky to have won. And we're right. Like, before he got this call, what was his motivation? Was he still going to the gym all the time? Was he starting to look and be like, could I buy a pizza franchise? And, what's the best way to kind of set up my, like, these are real things to think about when you have a guy who's got some losses and he's not a shiny prospect and he doesn't have maybe the best options. He's waiting on phone calls. I don't know. I just feel like this sets the stage for a great story for Carrington, a hometown title win.
Yeah, I think he's looked really good in the lead up. He's been active, all the things you want going into the biggest opportunity of your life. And unfortunately for Carlos Castro, he just hasn't had the activity of last year. So I think that's probably, going to be to his detriment in this fight. But one I'm certainly looking forward to.
Speed round. Kingsley Ibeh, Big Baby Miller. I think Kingsley Ibeh is going to beat Jarrell Big Baby Miller. I think he's going to be a breakout, random, big physical heavyweight guy that people are going to be like, who's this guy? He was an insurance salesman, got into boxing because the coach wouldn't buy an insurance policy from him unless he sparred someone, and in his work outfit knocked a guy out that was a boxer.
Really?
Ended up taking a pro fight maybe a year after that, then fought Guido Vianello to a draw and got knocked out by Jared Anderson when he was like relatively a novice. He's beaten a bunch of developmental level opposition. I think this version of Big Baby Miller is just an older guy who, he had a good performance against Andy Ruiz, but Andy Ruiz is also in that category of older guy, been through a lot of hard fights. These are both really, really elite fighters, but I think that Kingsley Ibeh is a really big guy who's really, really motivated right now. Shout out my guy Solo Photos, man. Love that. So that's something I want to bring up. Let's go to the Xander Zayas fight. The Xander Zayas versus Abass Baraou. What are your thoughts on this fight?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a pretty massive opportunity for both guys early in their world title reigns, a massive unification at 154. It's a shame that Top Rank haven't been able to get that sort of TV or streaming deal over the line. It's probably not going to be seen by a lot of people, unfortunately. As from an international perspective, we're not even sure if the way you guys will be watching it in the US will be available for us. So it might be a YouTube the next day type deal for us, which is a bit of a shame on a sort of a glamour division unification. But I think the unification's probably come pretty early for both guys. I see them as kind of similar-ish fighters, solid in all areas, but not really spectacular in one. Normally, those make for pretty competitive 12-round fights. So, yeah, that's certainly what I'm expecting. I reckon you would have seen much more of both guys in terms of on the way up through the journey of development than I have. Luke, I've seen a bit of Zayas, actually. He's been on a ton of those top rank cards. So, I'm excited for it. I don't think it's going to be spectacular, but that's probably because I know I'm not really going to be able to watch it. So if I was able to watch it, I'm sure I'd be more excited about it. But it's going up against Teo and Shakur, so maybe it's a good thing they haven't got that TV deal worked out yet.
Mankey Crazy, they sparred for 80 rounds, Xander and Abass. Who do you think that favors? I think that favors Xander because normally you favor the younger fighter because they got more time to grow. I think that's interesting that they know each other. Abass Barawu's only loss is to Jack Colquet. I think a lot of people felt that he beat Jack Colquet in that fight. He's a brawler who he kind of fights like a technical street fighter. And by what I mean by that is he leans in, pulls back, hits you, jumps in, pulls back. It's kind of like the classic when a guy would try to jump you at the bus stop move, where they're like kind of waiting on their back foot, might put a chin out and then pull back and try to hit you with something hard, some smoke punches. My gut feeling is just Zayas is just too young, too talented for Baraou. I think Telly's probably underestimated him a slight bit. Believed in his power too much, found out Baraou has a lot of power, and found himself in a fight that was unhinged and extremely fun to watch, but not fun for him to be in. The big X factor, like I told you before, is the crowd. Xander Zayas is potentially the next breakout fighter in Puerto Rico. He's the next gap from Felix Trinidad, Ivan Calderon, Miguel Cotto. You could throw Amanda Serrano in there for a brief period. Now it's Xander Zayas possibly. How does he handle that? Because probably the path to victory is to box, is to be on the back foot, is to slow this fight down. How does he handle the emotion of the crowd?
Yeah.
That's the fight to me.
Yeah, and he's also a young man too, and he's on a pretty big stage. So maybe the fact that it's not on ESPN or not on a massive deal will on a massive platform, will work in his favor potentially. A little bit more under the radar might help to subside some of the pressure and nerves on fight night for Xander. But yeah, I agree with you. Again, I don't see him as like a huge knockout threat at world level. Either I don't really for Baraou either. But I think the guy that can really put the foot down and push harder and make it more of a physical fight and have success is Baraou in that respect. So yeah, if it's going to be a pretty nip and tuck battle, because I do kind of see them similarly evenly matched up. If we get to sort of 8, 9, 10, and the advice from Baraou's corner is, hey, mate, this is a close fight. You got to put the foot down and go after this kid. How does Zayas, maintain his composure in that moment, on that stage in front of his home crowd? It's going to be interesting, But Baraou, I believe that fight with Tellez was in Florida. I'm assuming there was tons of Cubans there. So, he's had that sort of away quote unquote fight before. That's probably stood him in good instead for this opportunity. So yeah, mate, I wish this was on an off weekend. Sometimes we have off weekends in boxing where there's maybe not, really huge high profile fights. And then sometimes we get a heap all on one weekend and, you've just got to pick and choose and miss it. This is a fight I would really like to watch live, but if it's up against Teo Shakur, I'm going to choose that all day. So hopefully our YouTube gods will have something up for us Sunday afternoon or Monday Australian time.
Abass was coached by Adam Booth at one point. That's a good note. Giovanni Santillan making his junior middleweight debut on the undercard. Yuri Cedeno, middleweight, good fighter. And Rohan Polanco is on the undercard. Finally, our last thing from this marathon show is Zuffa 2 is back. Zuffa Boxing 0-2.
Oh, we've lost Lukie. I think he'll be back. Well, Zuffa 2. I didn't. Oh, here we go.
Yeah, I'm back. Lukie's, I don't know how that happened, but that was amazing. So Zuffa 2 is here, and it's headlined by Jose Valenzuela taking on Diego Torres. I saw Diego Torres in Muratalla live, which shows you how far back I go when there were people going, this Diego Torres is a bad dude. Raymond Muratalla might be in trouble. I go, this Raymond Muratalla guy's bad dude. I think Buddy's in trouble. But it's a good, like, regional kind of bounce back, entertaining fight for the level. But I'm just curious about, like, you got Jose Valenzuela, you got Surai Boachuk against Butayev, and then you got Gvozdyk versus Hot Rod. Does this pull in viewers on a Sunday?
Wow. Well, it's not going to pull any in Australia on a Monday lunchtime, I can tell you that. So I don't know. It's certainly there's more proven talent at the top of the card than Zuffa's first outing. But one thing I was meaning to ask you on my show, and I totally forgot earlier, Lukie, so I'm glad you brought this up because I can ask you now. On BoxRec, it says the matchmaker for Zuffa is a guy called Charles Bosecker.
Yep.
Are you familiar with him?
Yeah, I know him.
Oh, okay. And what are your thoughts on him as a matchmaker? Because I
think he's very good. I think he's a good matchmaker. I mean, all these guys, like, to me, like Brad Goodman and Bruce Trampler are really, really, really good. They're probably like the best. I always love when they make fights. I think Paco Damian, when he puts fights together, is really good. Robert Diaz was exceptional. He was right up there with Brad and Bruce, I felt like, towards the end of his time. And I'm talking more of the younger guys. I say younger guys. Charles Bosecker, like they said, Mankey Crazy said, is the 360 was the 360. He is the 360 Promotions matchmaker. Before that, he did a Fight Club OC, and he had booked a lot of fights. And he's a good fight guy, and he knows a lot about fights. And if you look, a lot of the fights that he makes are action fights. He puts action fights together. But, they have to work within their means. So it's like, every company is a company. So it's not like it's a video game where you go, we're going to go out here and we're going to just make the fights. Everyone wishes they could just make fights, and then they could make the best fights and put them forth. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff that go into it. But yeah, that's Bosecker. Yep.
Damn. Okay. Well, that's encouraging because, I looked at the name. I personally hadn't heard of him before, but knowing he's got your ticket of approval, Lukie, that's sort of is certainly encouraging for Zuffa moving forward. But yeah, that card, I mean, Zuffa 1 to Zuffa 2 is a bit of a stark contrast for at least the top end talent that's going to be on the second one. So, yeah, which one would I prefer to watch? Definitely Zuffa 2. It's going to be on Monday lunchtime for us over here, so we'll see if I can muster that.
This is my worry, right? It's a good card. It's a solid card. Is the production team going to be the same, or is it going to change fight card to fight card? Like, was the first fight card the big broadcast crew, and then they're going to bring in another crew for smaller shows? And what's the ratings dip? Because now people have made a preconceived notion. So is that the viewership that's going to stay? And are there just going to be fights that just live on social media where it's like, wow, this is a great fight, but then there's a lot of prospects that are going unseen, which might not have been different than traditional boxing, but I feel like there's a group of traditional boxing people that might not watch this program because they just don't feel connected to it. So they might not even be aware it's happening, because I'm not sure how many boxing programs are even bringing up that this card is happening, because it's slipping people's minds. So I'm curious to kind of see, I was curious to see the first card, but I'm curious to see these next two, which is this card and then the Charles Martin card, I believe, the F.A. Ajagba and Charles Martin rumored card. Curious how those two keep the momentum, because that's going to tell us a lot about the future of Zuffa Boxing. Because I think a lot of times promotions, like Golden Boy Promotions, you can judge them just as much by the Alexis Rocha, Raul Curiel 2 rematch as you can a big fight they put on. Because you kind of know the standard of fights they're putting forth and what to expect in the venues. I'm curious to see what an off night for Zuffa Boxing looks like and how they respond to that.
Yeah, certainly, mate. And I guess, especially in these early days, because we just don't have a lot of footage out there to, it's like trying to evaluate a fighter who has had one fight. It's so much easier to evaluate a guy who's had 25 fights because there's just so much more footage out there. Oh, this is when he fought a southpaw. This is what happened when he fought a pressure fighter. There's just more evidence out there for us to analyze. So even though we still may be wrong. So all we can do for Zuffa is judge them off that first show or what they've previously done in their other most successful combat sports business, the UFC. And I'm no huge UFC expert or MMA expert at all. I have watched a little bit of it before. If I've been at a mate's house, it's way more popular in Australia than boxing, that's for sure, and way more easily accessible than boxing for the most part too. So I have seen their products before, their production and things like that. And what I have noticed is that to your point, the production values seem to be pretty consistent through their pay-per-view tier, through their fight night, for lack of a better term, tier, and through their developmental tier. So I'm assuming that they would be bringing the same production values and that same attitude to their boxing outfit, being Zuffa Boxing. So in terms of the production being high quality on the first show, I would expect that to be the bare minimum sort of moving forward. And I'm sure they'll make tweaks and improve on things. I think the pacing is going to be as consistent, which was the high point of the first show. But yeah, I guess it is really difficult to really make informed opinions and informed predictions on what they will do moving forward, because we just haven't seen enough of it yet. But more options for fighters can't be a bad thing, but we'll see how we go.
I'll add this and then we'll conclude is they really need a fight where the fight's the story. Because right now, no fight has eclipsed Zuffa Boxing entering boxing.
Oh, they might have one coming up though.
Well, they might, but like they really need, it would help if over these next 3 or 4 fights, they get a fight that is not, it's just like a good quality Muratalla, Andy Cruz type fight that's really, really exciting, because they really need a fight where, because it's almost hard to break down these matchups, because the elephant in the room is, what's it going to look like? What's where are things going? We don't really even understand what's happening.
What's it for?
So it really would help if they had, like, if Boachuk or Butiev was like an absolute classic, or Rayo gets a knockout, highlight reel knockout, or Alexander Gvozdyk looks like every bit of like a light heavyweight champion that he might be. Like they really need, because that was the one thing, was Rodriguez had a good performance, but it wasn't a flawless performance. They didn't really have a clean knockout. They didn't have a great ending to the show. They need something that the hardcore boxing fan goes, I can't avoid talking about this world-class boxer.
Yeah, well, it might end up being that marquee matchup that you speak about. I think it might be Jai Opetaia and Noel Mikhailian, excuse me, coming up on the 8th of March. Like, that's a world title unification, fair enough, in a division that doesn't get a lot of attention. But, I think Jai's the best in the world at the weight class. I'm a biased Australian, so of course I'm going to say that. Noel Mikhailian, I didn't think looked great in his last fight with Baraou Jack. Thought that was a pretty tough fight to watch stylistically. But, I'm sure Zuffa are going to put all the bells and whistles on. So in terms of a fight of consequence that could draw in maybe some more resistive established boxing fans, I think that's probably the one there that if you can fire up the Paramount Plus app and watch it for free globally, a cruiserweight unification against a guy that's got a hell of a lot of hype on him and a whole lot of, fringe level pound for pound talent in Jai Opetaia. I mean, that could be the one that really gains them that attention and gives them that viral social media moment that they might desperately need to sort of convince people, give us a chance.
Well, that's our show. Tell people about where they can follow you.
Oh, yeah, I do a podcast called the Unofficial Scorecard Podcast. They're available everywhere on audio platforms and also on YouTube if you just want to search TUSCPOD. But no, thanks for the time, Lukie. Massively appreciate it, mate, and we'll have to do it again.